Okay, so on to witnesses. This is where all these different levels come in because we're on the stand, but we're also a witness for the one who's ultimately on the stand, Jesus, right? Trying to make this real quick, just about the power of a witness and how Jesus taught us, like how God's law designed this world to work, the power of two. In legal matters, a witness is literally going to make or break a case, okay? The ability of law enforcement to punish a situation, an officer executing his duties, or bring somebody before a judge would really ultimately hinge on the witnesses, and fresh corroborated witnesses. That's the thing that's really interesting, is their testimony is so vital. I remember reading this case not too long ago where there was a little girl who had been kidnapped and the police knew where she was. They had a feeling, I should say, that they knew where she was, but they had gotten testimony from people who saw her in the area, but it was like, it wasn't new. It wasn't like factual, like we saw this then at this time, all that. It was just, yeah, we think we saw her around this area. So they had a feeling. It was in a relative's house. But until they had a witness who would stand up and say, this is what I saw, they couldn't get a warrant to go into the property until somebody stood up and said, this is what I saw. I declare, this is my words, I'll stake the claim that this is what I saw. They could use that evidence to go before the judge and get a warrant so they could go in, and they found the little girl and they saved her, right? The witness testimony is giant. But there's another level that I don't think we even realize. I talked earlier about the testimony and our testimony that's so important, but really how the word of God is the testimony, right? Well, we are the second to that testimony. The Bible talks about how Jesus used what God wrote through the Old Testament when he was talking to people on this earth. He said, for if two or more agree on anything, they'll have whatever they ask. Or if two of you agree when you pray, your Father will hear. Okay, so Jesus talked about that. I wasn't aware until a few years ago, when you read through the gospel account of Jesus being taken before Pontius Pilate and then ultimately crucified. I wasn't aware that it actually makes really clear what Jesus was talking about, like how legal that is. Did you know? Okay, so at the time, the disciples and people of that time didn't understand the scriptures were prophesying what was going to happen with Jesus. We look back now and we see it, but they didn't know it. So God had long since said his son was going to come and take on the punishment for us and be beaten on the cross. And he was going to bear all this scourging to heal us. He would go through this hell. It was determined. Jesus knew it. That's why when they came to arrest him, he was like, I'm going to go, I'm not going to fight. I know what I have to do. I do not want to, no human would ever want to go through that torture, but for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. He knew. So he's before, I don't remember if it's Caiaphas or Pontius Pilate at this point, but they're making the accusations about they want him crucified, right? Did you know that the Bible records it wasn't until two people had the same testimony that they could actually move forward and crucify Jesus? Two people had to say the exact same thing. That's mind-blowing, because they were all throwing accusations. All of them were lies, but two had to say the exact same thing. And I would just lay before you this idea that in this court process that we are often finding ourselves with on this earth, where the accuser is bringing us before the judge, trying to point at all the things that we deserve, our gift is not only to be the defendant that the enemy is, trying to destroy, but to recognize that it's ultimately Jesus on the stand, and we are going to act as a witness that will say the same thing as what his word says. So in the face of contradicting reports on this earth, in the face of lack and, sickness, all sorts of things, we get to pick up his word, find out what he said about it, and then we get to say it. We get to be the fresh, corroborated eyewitness testimony that says, God said it, I say the same thing. and the enemy has to shut his mouth. So think about that again, real quick. Jesus, who was God in the flesh, who had, I don't even remember exactly how many prophecies about what he would go through and who he would be and what he would do for us. This was his destiny, and he couldn't achieve it, for lack of a better word, until two people agreed. We need to agree with him.